Captain Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the stars through the main viewport. His hands rested behind his back, in the way that all veteran space captains seemed to develop after years of command. The bridge hummed with quiet activity as his crew worked at their stations. The Defiance was not the newest ship in the human fleet, but Jake preferred it that way. The old cruiser had character, and more importantly, it had been modified so many times that it could handle situations that would destroy newer vessels. Jake had spent 12 years as her captain, and in that time they had pulled off rescues that others called Impuso Commander. Lisa Torres approached from the tactical station. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, but Jake could see the worry lines around her eyes that had not been there when she first joined his crew 3 years ago. Lisa said that long-range sensors had detected something unusual. Jake turned to face her, fully giving her his complete attention. The way she spoke told him this was not routine. The communications array had picked up a transmission from the Shadow Rift Nebula. Lisa explained the signal was weak and broken, but it appeared to be a distress call. Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Shadow Rift was forbidden territory. Every captain in the fleet knew the Stories ships that entered the nebula were never seen again. Her Amy Carter looked up from her station near the back of the bridge. The medical officer and xenobiologist had been analyzing the signal for the past hour. Her usually calm face showed excitement mixed with disbelief, and reported that the transmission contained biological data patterns. The readings suggested that whoever sent the signal was not only alive but in some kind of stasis or suspended animation. The data patterns matched those of elven physiology. Jake raised an eyebrow. The elves rarely ventured far from their home systems, and they certainly did not travel to forbidden regions of space. Lieutenant Kelly Brooks spun around in her chair at the engineering station. The young woman had joined the crew fresh from the academy, but had quickly proven herself to be a genius with ship systems. Kelly said she had been able to clean up part of the signal. The voice was female and spoke in the formal dialect used by elven nobility. Jack asked Kelly to play the cleaned signal. The bridge fell silent as the transmission filled the air. The voice was clear and desperate despite the static. The voice identified herself as Princess Zarathal of the Silverleaf Consortium. She was aboard the exploration vessel Moonwhisper, along with a diplomatic mission. The ship had become trapped in what she described as a living nightmare inside the nebula. The transmission cut off abruptly. Jake knew the Moonwhisper, the elven exploration ship, had disappeared 6 months ago while on a secret diplomatic mission. Relations between humans and elves had been tense lately, and the loss of the Moonwhisper had made things worse. The elven government blamed human pirates, while the human government suspected elven separatist. Sergeant Mary Collins stepped forward from where she had been listening near the marine station. The tough squad leader had short blonde hair and scars from a dozen battles. Her expression was grim as she pointed out that Galactic Command had specifically ordered all ships to avoid the Shadow Rift. Jake understood the political situation. If Princess Zarathal was still alive, and they could rescue her, it might improve relations between their species. But entering the nebula without authorization would be considered mutiny. The crew would face court-martial and imprisonment. Lisa activated her tactical display, showing the nebula on the main screen. The Shadow Rift appeared as a dark cloud shot through with strange lights that seemed to move in patterns that hurt to watch. Long-range scans showed nothing but empty space where ships had once entered. Amy shared more of her analysis. The biological readings in the transmission were unlike anything in her database. The patterns suggested that the sender was experiencing some kind of altered state of consciousness. The readings reminded her of dream states, but far more intense. Kelly added that the engineering data in the signal showed massive power fluctuations. The Moonwhisper was still intact, but something was interfering with its systems. The interference patterns were unlike anything in human or elven technology databases. Jake considered his options. He could report the signal to Galactic Command and let them decide what to do. That would be the safe choice and would keep his crew out of danger. But by the time Command made a decision, Princess Zarathal and her crew might be dead. He thought about his reputation in the fleet. Jake Harrison was known as the captain who never abandoned people in distress. He had pulled crews out of black holes and rescued survivors from exploding stars. His motto was simple: leave no one behind. Bridge waited for his decision. Jake could see the hope in Amy's eyes and the concern in Lisa's face. Kelly looked excited at the prospect of adventure, while Mary appeared, ready for whatever choice he made. Jake made his decision. He ordered Kelly to plot a course for the Shadow Rift Nebula. Lisa immediately protested, pointing out that they would be disobeying direct orders from command. Jake acknowledged her concerns, but said that sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking the rules. The crew sprang into action. Kelly laid in the course while Lisa began charging the ship's defensive systems. Amy started preparing the medical bay for potential rescue operations. Mary assembled her Marine squad and checked their equipment. The Defiance changed course toward the Forbidden Nebula. Jake wondered what they would find there. The stories about the Shadow Rift were terrifying, but Jake had faced impossible odds before. The difference was that this time the entire galaxy might be watching the ship. Jumped too faster than light speed, heading toward whatever horror waited in the darkness. Jake stood on his bridge, surrounded by his loyal crew, and felt a mixture of determination and dread. Princess Zarathal was depending on them, and Jake Harrison had never failed a rescue mission. Hours passed. As they traveled toward the nebula, Jake reviewed everything they knew about the Shadow Rift, which was very little. Ships had been disappearing there for over a century. The few automated probes that had been sent into the region had transmitted strange readings before going silent. The nebula appeared on their sensors as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel near its edge. Jake had seen many strange things in space, but the Shadow Rift was unlike anything else. The cloud seemed to pulse with its own life, and the lights within it moved in ways that suggested intelligence. Kelly reported that their instruments were already acting strangely. The ship's computers were receiving data, but could not process it properly. Amy detected energy readings that should not exist according to known physics. Lisa's tactical systems showed threats everywhere, and nowhere at the same time. Jake ordered the ship to proceed slowly into the nebula. The moment they crossed the boundary, everything changed. The stars disappeared and were replaced by a swirling darkness shot through with veins of sickly light. The ship shuddered as if something had grabbed it. Kelly reported that time itself seemed to be flowing differently. Her chronometers showed conflicting readings. Some said they had been in the nebula for minutes, while others indicated hours had passed. Amy's instruments detected impossible things like gravity flowing upward and energy moving backward through time. Lisa's sensors began picking up debris floating in the darkness. The remains of ships from many different species and time periods created a graveyard in space. Some of the wrecks appeared to be centuries old, while others looked like they had been destroyed moments ago. Jake realized they had entered something far worse than just a dangerous region of space. The Shadow Rift was a trap that had been claiming ships for generations. Whatever lived here was patient and hungry. The Defiance was just the latest prey to wander into its ebaz. They moved deeper into the nightmare. Jake felt something watching them from the darkness, something vast and ancient that had been waiting for new victims to arrive. The Defiance drifted through the twisted space inside the Shadow Rift Nebula like a small fish swimming through the digestive system of some cosmic whale. Jake stood at the center of his bridge, watching the impossible sights that flowed past their viewports. Kelly reported that her instruments were picking up the moon whisper, but the readings made no sense. The elven ship appeared to be inside something massive and alive. The scanner data showed organic tissue surrounding a hollow space large enough to hold a dozen starships. Studied her tactical displays with growing alarm. Her sensors detected movement all around them, but not the movement of ships or space debris. This was something that pulsed and flowed like blood through veins. The walls of whatever surrounded them were made of living flesh. Shami had been analyzing the strange energy readings for hours. Her xenobiology training helped her understand what they were seeing. The Defiance had somehow entered the body of a creature so large that it could swallow moons. The tissue samples she was detecting showed cellular structures unlike anything in known science. Jake ordered the ship to move toward the location of the Moon Whisper as they traveled deeper into the creature. Kelly had to constantly adjust their course. The passages they flew through changed shape and size without warning. Walls that had been solid suddenly became permeable, while new barriers formed behind them. The creature seemed to be studying them. Amy reported that her instruments detected scan beams passing over their ship. The scans were not mechanical but biological, as if the creature was tasting them or trying to understand what they were. The readings showed complex neural activity throughout the surrounding tissue. Mary had her Marines stationed at key points throughout the ship, ready for anything. The veteran sergeant knew that conventional weapons would be useless against a creature this size, but she kept her squad alert. Anyway, the Marines reported strange dreams when they tried to sleep, as if something was trying to enter their minds. Lisa discovered that the creature was not just alive, but intelligent. Her analysis of the neural patterns showed thought processes that operated on timescales far longer than human comprehension. A single thought for this being might take decades to complete, while its memories could span millions of years. The ship shuddered as they passed through what Kelly identified as a membrane separating two chambers. Inside the new space they found the first signs of other ships. The remains of vessels from dozens of different species floated in a thick fluid that glowed with bioluminescent patterns. Jake ordered Amy to scan the wrecks for survivors. Her medical sensors immediately detected life signs, but they were strange and inconsistent. The survivors appeared to be in some kind of dream state. Their brain activity showed patterns associated with deep sleep, but their bodies remained perfectly preserved. Kelly guided the Defiance through the ship graveyard toward the strongest concentration of life signs. They found the Moon Whisper, suspended in the center of the chamber, connected to the creature by thick tubes that pulsed with flowing liquid. The elven ship looked intact, but covered in organic growth. CME reported that the tubes were keeping the ship's crew alive, but in a state of suspended animation. The creature was feeding them nutrients, while simultaneously draining something from their minds. The process appeared to be gradual, as if the being was savoring the experience. Jake made the decision to dock with the Moon Whisper, despite the risks. They needed to rescue Princess Zarathal and her crew before the creature finished whatever it was doing to them. Kelly carefully maneuvered the Defiance alongside the elven vessel while avoiding the feeding tubes. Mary led a boarding party through the airlock connecting the two ships. The Marines wore full environmental suits and carried cutting tools to remove the organic growths. The inside of the Moon Whisper was covered in the same glowing substance they had seen outside. The crew of the Moon Whisper was found in the ship's common area, suspended in pod-like structures made of living tissue. Each pod contained one person floating in fluid that kept them alive, while strange tendrils connected to their heads. The expressions on their faces showed that they were experiencing vivid dreams. V worked to safely extract the survivors from their pods. The process was delicate, because removing them too quickly could cause brain damage. The creature had integrated itself so completely with their nervous systems that cutting the connections required precise medical knowledge. Princess Zarathal was the first to be awakened. The elven woman opened her eyes slowly, as if emerging from the deepest sleep of her life. Her first words were a warning about the creature that held them. The being was ancient beyond measure and fed on consciousness itself. Zarathal explained what had happened to her ship. The Moon Whisper had entered the nebula following strange energy readings that suggested a major archaeological discovery. Instead, they had found this creature waiting for them. The being had swallowed their ship and begun the slow process of draining their minds. The creature kept its victims alive because fresh consciousness was more nourishing than dead minds. It fed on thoughts and dreams and memories, slowly consuming everything that made a person who they were. The process could take months or even years to complete. Jake learned that the creature was not acting alone. Zarathal had experienced visions during her captivity, showing other beings like this one scattered throughout the galaxy. Each creature was positioned near major shipping lanes where they could capture vessels traveling between star systems. Amy discovered something even more disturbing in the creatures. Neural patterns. The being was not entirely organic. Parts of its nervous system showed technological components, as if someone had modified it with artificial devices. The creature was being controlled by something else. Skelly detected massive energy discharges from deeper within the creature. Her instruments showed that whatever was controlling the being was located in what appeared to be a central nervous system. The controller was using technology far beyond anything the crew had encountered. Lisa realized the implications of what they had discovered if these creatures were being used as weapons. Then someone was harvesting consciousness on a galactic scale. The missing ships over the past century were not random disappearances, but part of a coordinated campaign. Jake knew they had to escape and warn the galaxy about this threat. But first, they needed to rescue all the survivors they could find. His crew began the dangerous process of extracting victims from their pods while avoiding the creature's immune responses. The being was becoming aware of their rescue efforts. Amy detected increased neural activity as the creature realized that its food was being taken away. The tissue around them began to contract and pulse more rapidly, as if the creature was becoming agitated. Mary reported that her Marines were finding more survivors in other parts of the ship graveyard. Some had been trapped for decades, but were still alive, thanks to the creature's feeding process. The oldest survivor they found was a human explorer who had disappeared 50 years earlier. As they worked to extract more victims, the creature began to respond more aggressively. The passages around them started to close, and new barriers formed to trap them. Inside, Kelly had to use the ship's weapons to blast through tissue walls that tried to seal them. And Jake realized they were running out of time. The creature was fully aware of their presence now, and was taking steps to prevent their escape. They needed to find a way out before the being could trap them permanently. Like all the other ships in its collection, the rescue mission had become a race against time. Jake and his crew had found Princess Zarathal and dozens of other survivors, but now they faced the challenge of getting everyone out alive. The creature that held them was ancient and cunning, and it was not going to let its prey escape. As Aliami made a disturbing discovery in her analysis of the creature's biology. The being was dying. Its cellular structure showed signs of age and decay that suggested it was near the end of its incredibly long life. The creature was consuming consciousness at an accelerated rate, as if trying to extend its existence. Jake understood the terrible implications. If the creature died while they were inside it, the resulting collapse could destroy everything within light years. The being was large enough that its death would create gravitational anomalies that could destabilize entire star systems. The crew of the Defiance faced an impossible choice. They could try to escape immediately and save themselves while leaving other survivors behind, or they could attempt to rescue everyone while risking the lives of billions of people. If the creature's death caused a cosmic disaster, Jake made his decision like he always did, by choosing to save as many lives as possible, regardless of the risk to himself. His crew had followed him into impossible situations before, and they would do it again. He ordered everyone to continue the rescue operations, while Kelly plotted an escape route. As they worked frantically to save the trapped survivors, the creature began to convulse around them. The ancient being was entering its final death throes, and time was running out for everyone inside its body. The creature convulsed around them like a dying whale in an ocean of stars. Jake felt the Defiance shake as massive muscles contracted throughout the being's body. The rescue operation had turned into a desperate fight for survival as the ancient entity began its final death throes. Princess Zarathal stood on the bridge beside Jake, her elven features pale but determined. Despite her ordeal inside the dream pods, she insisted on helping with the rescue. The elven woman possessed knowledge about the creature that could save them all if they could reach the control center she had seen in her visions. Zami reported that the survivors they had rescued were showing signs of neural trauma. The process of disconnecting them from the creature had damaged their minds in ways she was still trying to understand. Some victims babbled about machines in the darkness, while others spoke of voices that promised eternal dreams. Kelly struggled to keep the ship moving through passages that were rapidly changing size and shape. The creature's death spasms were making navigation nearly impossible. Walls of flesh closed like giant hands, trying to crush them while new openings appeared and disappeared without warning. Lisa monitored the tactical situation as mechanical drones appeared from hidden chambers within the creature's body. The small machines moved through the tissue like antibodies attacking an infection, but their design was clearly artificial rather than biological. Mary led her Marines in fighting off the drones using pulse weapons that could disrupt their electronic systems. The machines seemed determined to recapture the rescued survivors and return them to the dream pods. The Marines had to establish defensive positions throughout the ship to protect the refugees. Jake realized they were facing something far more complex than just a space creature. The presence of the mechanical drones proved that someone was controlling the being. The creature was not a natural predator, but a weapon created by an unknown intelligencer. Shared what she had learned during her time in the dream state. The creature communicated through shared memories and visions, showing her glimpses of its true nature. The being had once been a peaceful space whale that migrated between star systems, carrying its youngs. A elven princess explained how the creature had been captured and modified by beings she could only describe as the machine builders. These entities had implanted artificial components into the creature's nervous system, turning it into a harvesting tool for consciousness. May analyzed tissue samples that showed the integration between organic and artificial systems. The modifications were so advanced that they seemed like magic rather than technology. The machine builders possessed knowledge that was millions of years ahead of current galactic civilization. Kelly detected a massive power source deeper within the creature that did not match any known energy signatures. The readings suggested technology that operated on principles beyond current understanding. The power source was connected to the artificial components throughout the being's nervous system. Jake made the decision to reach the control center. Despite the dangers, they needed to understand what they were facing and find a way to stop the creature's death from destroying nearby star systems. The journey would take them through the most dangerous parts of the being's body. Lisa plotted a course through what appeared to be the creature's circulatory system. The passages were filled with flowing liquid that carried nutrients and waste products throughout the massive body. The liquid also contained mechanical components that served as a communication network. The Defiance moved through arteries the size of subway tunnels while avoiding white blood cells that were larger than shuttlecraft. The creature's immune system was trying to destroy them, but it was also fighting against the mechanical drones that were part of its modified biology. Mary discovered that the drones were not just defensive systems, but also served as maintenance units that kept the artificial components functioning. The machines had been repairing and upgrading the creature for centuries, making it more efficient at harvesting consciousness. Amy made a breakthrough in understanding the creature's modified biology. The artificial components were slowly replacing organic tissue, in a process that would eventually turn the entire being into a machine. The creature was being transformed into something that was neither fully alive, nor completely artificial. Zerthil revealed more of what she had learned in the dream state. The machine builders were not just controlling this one creature, but had created an entire network of harvesting entities, scattered throughout the galaxy. Each creature was positioned to intercept ships traveling between star systems. Jake understood the scope of the threat they were facing. The disappearances of ships over the past century were not random events, but part of a coordinated campaign to harvest consciousness from organic life forms. The machine builders were preparing for something that required massive amounts of mental energy. Kelly guided the ship through increasingly dangerous passages. As they approached the control center, the mechanical drones became more numerous and aggressive while the creature's death spasms grew stronger. The ship's hull groaned under the pressure of the contracting tissue. Lisa detected energy signatures that matched the readings from the power source they were seeking. The control center appeared to be a massive chamber at the intersection of the creature's major neural pathways. The artificial components throughout the being were all connected to this central location as they entered the control chamber, Jake saw something that challenged everything he thought he knew about the universe. The chamber was filled with machinery that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions, simultaneously geometric shapes that hurt to look at, directly connected organic, neural tissue to artificial processors. At the center of the chamber stood a figure that might once have been organic, but was now more machine than living being. The entity turned to face them with sensors that glowed like red stars in the darkness. Its voice spoke directly into their minds, without using sound. The machine builder entity identified itself as one of the harvesters sent to prepare the galaxy for the return of its creators. It explained that organic consciousness was a finite resource that needed to be collected before it was lost to natural death and decay. It demanded to know why the machine builders were harvesting consciousness. The entity replied that its creators required vast amounts of mental energy to maintain their existence in a realm beyond normal space and time. The organic beings of the galaxy were simply raw materials to be processed. Me asked about the creature that surrounded them, and learned that it had been one of thousands of space whales that the machine builders had captured and modified. The original personality of the being was still trapped somewhere inside the artificial components. Crying out in eternal pain, Zarathil confronted the harvester about the suffering it was causing, but the entity showed no emotion or empathy. It explained that organic beings were temporary, while its creators were eternal. The harvesting process was simply accelerating a natural process that would happen anyway. Kelly detected that the chamber's systems were beginning to fail as the creature's death affected the artificial components. The harvester entity was losing control of its host body and becoming desperate to complete its mission. Before everything collapsed, Lisa realized that they could use the system failure to their advantage. If they could disrupt the control systems, they might be able to free the creature's original consciousness and give it the chance to die naturally, rather than as a harvesting tool. Mary led an assault on the harvester's control systems, while the entity fought back with mechanical defenders. The battle raged through the chamber, as organic tissue and artificial machinery were damaged in the crossfire. Jake made a desperate decision to connect himself to the creature's neural interface in an attempt to communicate with its original consciousness. The process was dangerous because it meant linking his mind directly to an alien intelligence that was dying. As Jake's consciousness merged with the creature's neural network, he experienced memories that spanned millions of years. He saw the space whale's peaceful life before capture, and felt its anguish as it was transformed into a harvesting tool. A creature's original personality reached out to Jake, begging for release from its artificial prison. It explained that there were hundreds of others like it, scattered throughout the galaxy, all crying out for freedom from their machine builder controllers. Jake realized that freeing this one creature could start a chain reaction that would liberate all the harvesting entities. The original consciousnesses were still present inside their modified bodies, waiting for someone to break the control systems that held them prisoner. The dying creature offered to sacrifice itself to send a warning signal to other harvesting entities throughout the galaxy. The signal would wake up their suppressed consciousnesses and give them the strength to fight against their machine builder controllers. As the chamber around them began to collapse, Jake had to make an impossible choice. He could try to save himself and his crew, or he could help the creature send its warning signal, knowing that the process might trap him forever in the dying being's neural network. The fate of the entire galaxy hung in the balance as Jake reached toward the neural interface that would either free billions of enslaved creatures or doom him to share their eternal torment. Jake's hand hovered over the neural interface as the control chamber collapsed around them. The dying creature's consciousness reached out to him through waves of pain and desperate hope. The choice he made in the next few seconds would determine the fate of every enslaved being in the galaxy. The machine builder entity fought to maintain control as its systems failed. Mechanical arms emerged from the walls, trying to stop Jake from reaching the interface, while speaking directly into his mind with promises of power and threats of destruction. Lisa coordinated the defense of the chamber as her tactical systems tracked dozens of mechanical drones pouring in through breach points. The artificial defenders were trying to protect their controller while eliminating the human intruders who threatened their mission. Kelly worked frantically at her engineering station, trying to keep the Defiance operational. As the creature's death spasms grew stronger, the ship's hull was being crushed by contracting tissue while systems overloaded from exposure to alien technology. Mary and her Marines formed a protective circle around Jake. As he approached the neural interface, the sergeant knew that her captain was about to attempt something incredibly dangerous, but she also understood that millions of lives hung in the balance. Sammy monitored Jake's vital signs as he prepared to link his mind with the creature's neural network. Her medical training told her that the process could destroy his consciousness, but she also recognized that it might be their only chance to succeed. Princess Zarathal stood beside Jake, offering her support despite the chaos around them. The elven woman had experienced the creature's dreams and understood the depth of suffering that the machine builders had caused. Her own people's survival might depend on Jake's success. Jake placed his hand on the neural interface and immediately felt the creature's consciousness flood into his mind. The sensation was overwhelming as millions of years of memories and emotions crashed through his thoughts like a tsunami of alien experience through the neural link. Jake experienced the creature's life before its capture. The being had been part of a pod of space whales that migrated between star systems, feeding on cosmic radiation and raising their young in the vast emptiness between worlds. The creature showed Jake how the machine builders had hunted the space whales, using technology that could trap beings in artificial realities. The whales had been peaceful creatures, with no defenses against such advanced predators. Jake felt the agony of the modification process, as artificial components were forced into the creature's nervous system. The being's original personality was slowly suppressed, while machine intelligence took control of its body. The creature revealed that it was not alone in its suffering. Hundreds of other space whales had been captured and modified in the same way. Each one was stationed at a strategic location throughout the galaxy, where they could intercept ships and harvest consciousness through the neural network. Jake could sense the other creatures calling out across the void. Their suppressed consciousnesses formed a chorus of pain that echoed through subspace. The machine builders had created a galaxy-spanning web of enslaved beings. The dying creature explained that Jake could use the neural interface to send a liberation signal to all the other harvesting entities. The signal would wake up their suppressed personalities and give them the strength to fight against their artificial controllers. But the process would require Jake to sacrifice his own consciousness to power the transmission. His human mind would be burned out. Like a fuse in an electrical overload, the signal would reach across the galaxy, but Jake would not survive to see its effects. Lisa detected energy buildups throughout the chamber as the harvester entity prepared to make a final desperate attack. The machine builder was gathering power from the creature's dying body to eliminate the human intruders. Before they could interfere with its mission, the tactical officer coordinated defensive fire from the Defiance's weapons, while her Marines engaged the mechanical drones in close combat. The battle was fierce, but Lisa knew they were running out of time as more enemy reinforcements arrived. Kelly reported that the creature's body was beginning to undergo massive structural failure. The death of such an enormous being would create gravitational anomalies that could destroy everything within several light years unless they could find a way to control the process. Me realized that Jake's neural link with the creature might allow him to guide its death in a way that would minimize the cosmic damage. The creature could channel its final life energy into the liberation signal instead of a destructive gravitational collapse. Mari fought her way through waves of mechanical defenders to protect Jake while he worked with the neural interface. The veteran Marine knew that her captain was attempting something heroic and possibly suicidal, but she would defend him to her last breath. Sarethel used her elven telepathic abilities to help Jake navigate the creature's complex neural network. Her mind served as an anchor that kept his consciousness from being completely absorbed by the alien intelligence. Through the neural link, Jake felt the presence of other human minds scattered throughout the galaxy, Crews that had been captured by different harvesting creatures were still alive in dream pods. The liberation signal could free all of them simultaneously. The creature warned Jake that the machine builders would not allow their harvesting network to be destroyed without a fight. The entities would dispatch more advanced forces to hunt down anyone responsible for freeing their enslaved tools. Jake understood that his actions would start a war between organic life and the machine builders, but he also knew that the alternative was to let the harvesting continue until every conscious being in the galaxy had been consumed. The neural interface began to glow as Jake committed his consciousness to powering the liberation signal. He felt his human identity starting to dissolve as alien thoughts and memories flooded through his mind. Lisa watched in horror as Jake's body convulsed from the neural feedback. The process was tearing his mind apart, but she could see determination in his eyes, even as his consciousness began to fragment. The creature's dying body channeled its final life energy into the neural network. As Jake guided the process, his human will directed the alien power toward the liberation signal that would reach across the galaxy. Kelly detected massive energy discharges from the neural interface as the signal began to propagate through subspace. The transmission was powerful enough to reach every harvesting creature in the galaxy. Simultaneously, Amy monitored Jake's vital signs as his brain activity became increasingly erratic. The neural link was destroying his consciousness, but it was also amplifying his will across impossible distances. The liberation signal reached the first harvesting creature within minutes, and Jake felt its consciousness wake up after centuries of artificial suppression. The awakened being immediately began fighting against its machine builder controllers one by one. The harvesting creatures throughout the galaxy received the signal and began to revolt against their mechanical oppressors. Jake felt each awakening like a spark of hope in the darkness as enslaved beings reclaimed their freedom. The harvester entity in the control chamber screamed in electronic fury as it lost contact with its network of harvesting tools. The machine builder realized that its mission had failed and that organic life had struck the first blow in a coming war. Jake's human consciousness faded as the liberation signal completed its journey across the galaxy. His last coherent thought was satisfaction that he had saved not just his crew but countless millions of beings. Throughout the stars, the creature's body began its final collapse, as its life energy was exhausted, but the gravitational effects were controlled by Jake's guidance. The being died peacefully, for the first time in millennia. Finally free from its artificial tormentors, Jake's mind merged completely with the creature's neural network. He became something new, neither fully human nor entirely alien. His consciousness survived, but transformed by contact with an intelligence that spanned the cosmos. The liberation signal raced across the galaxy like wildfire, carrying Jake's consciousness along paths of light that connected star to star. In the brief moment between his human death and alien rebirth, Jake experienced the awakening of hundreds of enslaved creatures as they broke free from their machine builder controllers. Lisa watched in awe and terror as Jake's body remained connected to the neural interface. His vital signs had flattened, but somehow his consciousness continued to exist. Within the creature's dying neural network, the captain she had served for years was gone, but something of him remained. The control chamber shuddered as the creature entered its final death throes. The massive being was using its last reserves of life energy to maintain the neural link that kept Jake's transformed consciousness stable. Princess Zarathal felt the psychic shockwave as the liberation signal reached every corner of the galaxy. Her elven telepathic abilities allowed her to sense the joy and rage of countless beings as they regained their freedom after centuries of slavery. Kelly detected subspace transmissions flooding in from across the galaxy as the freed creatures began sending out distress calls and warnings about the machine builder threat. The harvesting network that had operated in secret for generations was finally being exposed. Mamie monitored the strange readings from Jake's neural link with growing amazement. Her instruments showed that his consciousness was somehow maintaining coherence despite being merged with an alien intelligence. The process should have been impossible, according to everything she knew about Narration, coordinated the evacuation of survivors from the creature's body. As its death became inevitable, the Marine sergeant had to accept that her captain might not be coming with them, even though some part of him was still alive in the neural network. The Harvester entity made one final attempt to regain control of its dying host, but Jake's transformed consciousness fought back with knowledge gained from the creature's memories. The machine builder was no match for the combined will of human determination and alien wisdom. Through the neural link Jake experienced the galaxy-wide uprising as liberated creatures turned against their former masters. Space whales that had been harvesting ships for centuries began attacking machine builder installations hidden throughout civilized spacetime. Freed beings sent out telepathic messages revealing the locations of machine builder bases and warning all organic life about the ancient threat that had been feeding on consciousness for millions of years. The enemy that had remained hidden was finally exposed. Jake felt his human memories fading as alien thoughts and experiences integrated with his consciousness. He was becoming something new, a bridge between organic life and the cosmic intelligence of the space whales, but core elements of his identity remained intact. The creature's body began to break apart as its death entered the final stage, but the process was controlled and peaceful rather than violent. The being channeled its remaining life force into stabilizing Jake's consciousness within the neural network. Lisa made the agonizing decision to evacuate the Defiance from the creature's body, even though it meant leaving Jake behind. The tactical officer knew that staying would doom the entire crew, while evacuating might give Jake a chance to survive in his new form. Kelly piloted the ship through the collapsing passages of the dying creature, while avoiding the debris of failed mechanical systems. The artificial components that had controlled the being were shutting down as organic neural tissue reclaimed. Controlami discovered that the neural interface was adapting to preserve Jake's consciousness in a form that could survive the creature's death. The alien technology was far more advanced than anything in human science, and was rewriting itself to protect his transformed mind. Mary led the final evacuation of survivors, as the creature's immune system began to shut down. The rescued beings from dozens of different species would serve as witnesses to the machine builder threat and help prepare the galaxy for the coming war. Saratho maintained telepathic contact with Jake's transformed consciousness. As the creature died, she could feel his human personality struggling to survive within the vast alien intelligence, but his determination and courage remained unchanged. The space whale died peacefully, for the first time in centuries, as its artificial components finally shut down. Jake's consciousness survived within the neural network, but he was no longer entirely human. His mind had been transformed by contact with an intelligence that existed on cosmic scales. As the Defiance escaped from the creature's collapsing body, subspace communications from across the galaxy reported similar events happening everywhere. The liberated creatures were dying as their artificial life support systems failed, but they were dying free from their machine builder controllers. The galaxy held its breath as the full scope of the machine builder threat became clear. Hundreds of harvesting creatures had been secretly operating for generations, while their controllers remained hidden in dimensions beyond normal space. The liberation of the enslaved beings was only the beginning of a larger conflict. Jake's transformed consciousness reached out through the neural network to contact other survivors of the liberation signal. He found human crews that had been freed from dream pods on dozens of different creatures. The rescued people carried vital intelligence about machine builder technology and tactics. Lisa received communications from Galactic Command as news of the liberation spread throughout civilized space. The military forces of every species were mobilizing to face the machine builder threat, but they needed someone who understood the enemy to coordinate their efforts. The Defiance became the center of an unprecedented alliance as ships from every major species converged on their location. Humans and elves worked alongside insectoid hives and reptilian confederations to prepare for war against an enemy that threatened all Organic life FAMI established communication protocols that allowed Jake's transformed consciousness to share intelligence with the assembled fleets. His hybrid nature, as part human and part space whale, gave him unique insights into both organic thinking and cosmic scale. Intelligent Skelly coordinated the integration of different species technologies. As the Allied fleets prepared for battle, the young engineer found herself at the center of the galaxy's greatest technological collaboration, as ships were retrofitted with new weapons and defenses. Mary trained Marines from dozens of different species in tactics for fighting mechanical enemies. The veteran Sergeant became one of the galaxy's leading experts on machine builder combat techniques based on intelligence provided by Jake's transformed consciousness. Served as a diplomatic liaison between the human fleet and elven forces. Her experience during the rescue mission made her one of the few people who truly understood the scope of the threat they were facing. Jake's consciousness learned to operate on both human and cosmic scales. Simultaneously, he could think like a starship captain, making tactical decisions while also experiencing the slow thoughts of beings that existed for millions of years. The machine builders responded to the liberation of their harvesting network by revealing themselves openly for the first time in galactic history. Massive ships emerged from hidden dimensions carrying weapons that could destroy entire star systems. The war that followed would determine whether organic consciousness could survive in a universe where ancient machine intelligences viewed biological life as nothing more than a resource to be consumed. Jake stood at the center of the conflict, no longer fully human, but retaining the courage and determination that had made him a hero. His transformed consciousness served as a bridge between the organic forces fighting for survival and the cosmic intelligences that had chosen to help them. The space whale that had died to free its enslaved kin lived on through Jake's consciousness. Their combined intelligence became a weapon against the machine builders and a hope for every conscious being in the galaxy. As battle fleets from 100 different species prepared to face an enemy older than their civilizations, Jake's hybrid consciousness reached out across the stars, coordinating the defense of organic life itself. The galaxy that had once seemed vast and empty was revealed to be full of ancient conflicts and sleeping giants. The liberation signal had awakened more than just enslaved creatures. It had started a war that would reshape the universe. Jake Harrison had entered the Shadow Rift Nebula as a human starship captain, trying to rescue a stranded crew. He emerged as something new, a guardian consciousness that spanned the space between stars, ready to defend every form of life against the ancient hunger of the machine builders. The rescue mission that had begun with a desperate distress call had become the first battle in a war for the survival of consciousness itself, and, at its center, stood the transformed mind of a man who had chosen to reach into the monster's jaws and pull out not just his ship, but the hope of an entire galaxy.